Is it recording? Okay, thank you. Okay, so today we are going to discuss taking care of our gardens. So I'll begin by discussing what we are not allowed to do. Then what does it mean to relinquish our produce or maybe our land? What does it mean? We'll see. There are a few understandings to it and what exactly it means. And then finally, taking these limitations in mind, then how do we take care of our garden on Shemitah? Then after that, I will discuss how do we prepare for Shemitah before Shemitah even came. And then the last thing I'm going to discuss is plants that we have at home in pots. Does Shemitah apply to them? If not, what are the conditions? So that is going to be our talk today. So first of all, what are we not allowed to do during the Shemitah? So the Torah tells us a few things we are not allowed to do. We are not allowed to lizmo, that's to prune. But prune what? So here there is, some understand that it is only the vine that we're not allowed to prune from the Torah. Some understand, and most understand that this is the understanding of Rambam, that we're not allowed to prune trees generally if we do that in order to make them flourish. So not every cutting of a tree will be defined pruning, but if we do it for flourishing, that is, or for the health of the tree, that is not allowed from the Torah. So again, pruning, we have those who understand that it is only the vine we're not allowed to prune. Other trees we are allowed. And then those who say all trees we are not allowed if it is meant to make the tree healthier. Those who say that it is only vine we're not allowed to prune, why would that be? So apparently, the vine is different to any other tree, that if you don't prune it, eventually it dies. It withers and dies. Or that B, it is crucial to prune it in order for its produce to be healthy. If you don't prune it, then it has very little grapes and a very low quality. So it is crucial to prune. Unlike other trees, if you prune it, it's good. But if you don't, still you'd have tasty oranges, apples, pears, whatever it is. They say, and I don't know because I'm not a farmer, that kiwi in that regard is like grapes. If you don't prune it, then there's very little on the tree and it doesn't taste and it doesn't, and it's not sweet. So it could be that kiwi would be like the vine according to the opinions that say it's only a vine. Maybe yes, maybe not. But that is when it comes to pruning. Now I'm only discussing from the Torah. So we'll see the rabbinic harchavot. How do you say harchavot in English? Expansions. Thank you, Naomi. Yes. The Torah also says we're not supposed to sow on Shemitah. The question is, planting, is that included in sowing? Yes or no? So according to some understandings, yes. According to others, no. Only sowing, meaning if I take the seed and put it in the ground, that's not allowed. But if I take an existing tree and I put it in the ground, or an existing plant and put it in the ground, that will be fine. Then there are those who say, no, vegetables are not allowed because that would be like sowing, taking a vegetable plant and a seed is the same, but a tree plant is different. Why? Because vegetables grow this year. So when I plant vegetables, I'm planting them for the Shemitah. If I plant a tree, I'm planting it for the year to come. It's not going to give produce this year, so it's different. The Torah doesn't prohibit that. So we have different understandings of what exactly it means not to sow, but something about sowing is not allowed. The general understanding is that sowing and planting of fruits and vegetables are not allowed. Now, there's an interesting question regarding trees that do not give fruit. Are we allowed to plant them on Shemitah? So there is an opinion in the Yerushalmi that we are allowed to. Why? Because the Torah talks about harvesting, about picking fruit. So it seems that the Torah is concerned about the produce, about the fruit, not about planting trees for beauty. That's outside the premise of Shemitah, and that might be allowed. But the Rambam says, no, that's not allowed. And that seems to be the general understanding of most of all the poskim today, but most throughout the generation. So we discussed pruning, we discussed sowing, we discussed what else? No, that's what we discussed so far. And then there is harvesting. The Torah tells us we're not supposed to harvest on Shemitah. But just a minute, what does it mean we're not supposed to harvest? We are allowed to eat the fruit of the Shemitah. How is it that we're going to consume it if we're not allowed to harvest? So the understanding is that harvesting means at gross. If we're doing it in order to, we come with our combines to the field and pick everything to bring in order to bring it to the market, that we're not allowed to do. But to go and pick a bit of what we need for home consumption, that we are allowed to. So again, what we saw until now, we're not supposed to harvest, we're not supposed to prune, we're not supposed to sow/plant. And then we are also not supposed to plow. Now, in the Gemara, it's a machloket, the plowing, but we rule that plowing is part of the halakha. So we're not allowed to plow on Shemitah as well. So now, what is considered plowing here too? There are all kinds of understandings, because plowing could mean you plow the ground before you even sow in order to make the ground susceptible and more airy, better for things to grow in it. And then you plow it again after you put the seeds in order to for the seeds to go inside and make it grow. And then there is plowing that you do around existing trees, not as a preparation for sowing or post-sowing, just as taking care of the garden. So what of these actions is actually the plowing that the Torah discusses? So the plowing that is the pre-sowing plowing that everyone agrees upon. The other types of plowing, not everyone agrees upon. There is discussion there. Okay. Then so these are the Torah prohibitions. Sowing, planting, yes, that's meaning putting new trees in the ground. That will include also grafting, because you're basically taking a branch and connecting it. It doesn't matter if you connect it to the ground or to a tree that is connected to the ground, that will still be the same. So we have the planting, the pruning, the harvesting, and the plowing. Those are the four things we're not allowed to do from the Torah. And as I said, there are discussions around each one of these things, what exactly it includes. Now, these discussions are important, but the bottom line will be the same, because whatever is not prohibited from the Torah will be prohibited from the Rabbanan. So the discussion is it's not that whoever says that plowing is only with sowing, they won't say that the other type of plowing is allowed. They'll say the other type of plowing is mid'Rabbanan, is rabbinic. So the argument around these or regarding sowing, those who say you're not supposed to, that planting is not considered sowing, they would say it's not considered sowing from the Torah, but rabbinically, it's still not allowed. So all of these discussions are on the Torah level, not whether these things are allowed. Everyone agrees that all these activities are not allowed. But the question is it Torah or rabbinic? Now you're asking what difference does it make? If the bottom line is they're not allowed, then they're not allowed. We'll see soon that it does make a difference. It makes a difference because those activities that are not allowed from the Torah are not allowed, period. Those activities that are not allowed rabbinically are generally prohibited, but under certain circumstances, for instance, if it has to do with the health of the tree or other circumstances, are allowed. So that's why it does make a difference whether something is not allowed only from the Torah or whether it is rabbinical. Okay, so now let's go to what the rabbi said. So upon these four activities, the rabbi said, generally, what we see is that the Torah did not want us to work the land during the Shemitah. So watering, weeding, mowing the lawn, fertilizing, etc. All of these activities that we will normally do in our garden or in our field, the rabbis say, on the Shemitah, we don't do it. However, as I said before, all what the rabbi said is not allowed in order to make the fruit better. So if, for instance, I have a tree that if I'm not going to water, the produce, the fruit, are not going to be as healthy as they would be if I am going to water it. I'm not allowed to water it. So the fruit will be less healthy. What can I do? But if the ramifications of me not watering the tree is that the tree itself is going to wither, then I am allowed to water the tree. That's called le'ukume avalo le'avruye. Le'avruye means to make the fruit better. So any activity that is aimed at making the fruit better, I'm not allowed to do. But any activity that is there to make the tree not get sick or not die is allowed to be done if it is only a rabbinic prohibition. Okay. Now note that none of the Torah prohibitions are such that will make anything die, right? If I won't prune a tree, it's not going to die necessarily. If I won't, if I'm not allowed to plant it, then there is nothing that will die, right? Not plowing will not cause it to die, but the rabbinic things might cause it to die, and therefore there's also more room. There needs to be more room for leniency there, but generally also the rabbis' prohibitions are more lenient. Okay, so now we know what we are not allowed to do in the field. Basically, nothing that is aimed at the produce. Generally, there might be some exceptions. There are some opinions in regard to some things, but generally, those are things we're not allowed to do. We're not supposed to do. Now, there is another aspect of Shemitah that I mentioned, that is, we are supposed to relinquish the produce, or maybe relinquish the land. It's not so clear what exactly we relinquish, but in order to, let's assume it's only the produce, because that's probably the case. So we relinquish the produce. What does that mean? That means to say that if I have an orange tree in my garden, I'm supposed to treat it as not mine for the Shemitah, for the year of the Shemitah. Meaning, the bottom line is, it's not only for me to consume, but anyone who would like oranges from my tree is allowed to come and take oranges from my tree. But just a minute, what does that mean? If I did not relinquish my tree, I still claim ownership over my tree. I'm not supposed to, but let's say I do. Not me, someone else. I do keep Shemitah. Let's say someone doesn't want to keep Shemitah and says, I don't relinquish my ownership over Shemitah. Does that mean people are now not allowed to take from my tree? Or do I say, no, the Torah declares that this year your tree is not yours, and therefore everyone is allowed to go and take? What is the case? So there are two understandings here. Some understand that the Torah declares that basically trees do not belong to their owners on Shemitah, and therefore anyone can take. And some understand, no, that's not the case. The trees still belong to their owners. But there is a mitzvah on people to relinquish their produce. And therefore, a person has to actually declare in front of other people, I relinquish my ownership over my produce, and anyone can come and take it. By doing that, then people are supposed to take it. So there are two ramifications here. The one is, do I have to actively go and tell people they can use pick things from the tree? And regarding other people, if I see an orange tree and I don't see anywhere a plaque that says anyone can take, am I allowed to go and take because it's Shemitah? Or yes, it's Shabbat. I don't know if this person is actually keeping Shemitah, and did he actually declare that anyone can take? So these are the ramifications of these understandings. So therefore, just to make sure that we're doing the right thing is to declare that anyone can come and take. However, the fact that anyone can come and take doesn't mean that people can just come into our garden just like that without an invitation and do whatever they and pick from our tree. Because first of all, people might ruin the garden. They might disturb our privacy, right? We want our privacy in the garden. Sorry? They might steal our lights. Yes, I'm sorry for that. So some people put a sign with a phone number. Some people put a sign that between these and these hours people could come in. Whatever it is, it doesn't mean that we have to allow anyone to come in at any time. But we have to give people access to our produce in some way. Okay, so now we know what we're not allowed to do. We're not allowed to work our garden in order to make the produce flourish. We're not allowed to do the Torah activities and all the rabbinic things around it. And we're supposed to give people access to our produce. And the right thing to do would be to actually actively declare it, and make sure that we're doing the right thing. Also, according to the opinion that is the right thing to do, that we have to actively do. Okay, so now how do we take care of our garden during Shemitah? Does that mean that our garden during Shemitah has to lay waste and desolate and get weeds all over? No. Why? Because there is nothing in the Torah that says that things that are for generally, let's not run ahead of ourselves. So let's start with what we are allowed to do. So let's start with the rabbinic activities. We said that watering the garden is not allowed by the rabbis. However, we said if something is going to wither and die, we are allowed to water it. So let's say our grass. We want our grass to be nice and green. We don't have to wait for it to actually start getting yellow in order to water it. Anything that will, the point where if I don't water it now, it's going to get dry, then that is the point when I'm allowed to water it. So I'm not sure what exactly is that period. I think I read something about, I don't remember already. Did anyone ever hear something? I read that someone in agriculture wrote something, but I don't remember what he wrote, how many days are needed. But whatever your gardener will know. So your gardener will tell you, listen here, if you don't do it every 5 days, every 6 days, whatever it is, you don't water it, then it will dry out. So then that's what you do. You water it every 5 days, 4 days, whatever is needed. Now, when you water it, once you begin the watering, you could leave it on for as long as you want. So let's say, in order for your grass to not dry, now is the time to water it. So you put on the sprinklers. But in order for it not to dry, 1 hour will be enough. But you want to leave it for 2 hours in order for it to grow even better. You are allowed to do that because once the water is running, you're allowed to leave it running. There's nothing wrong with that. So generally, the watering on Shemitah could be longer intervals between one watering period and the other. But the watering itself could be slightly longer if you want to, if you have a reason to do it, if you think it will be better for whatever reason. Now, today, most gardens have, I don't know if many gardens have a computer running system. Now, some computer running systems can be set a year ahead for winter, summer, whatever. If you have such a system, that's wonderful because then you could set it like any other year, just set it before Shemitah, and then just leave it. That is allowed because then you are not watering it. It is watering itself. You set it before Shemitah, and that's fine. That is allowed, and that's wonderful. That's the best. If not, then you do what as I said before. Weeding. So any weeding that is done for making let's say as I have bushes growing and the weed is taking their place, and that's a problem. I shouldn't do that. If the weeding is for beauty, meaning I'm not cutting the weeds because I want my bush to grow better. It's just I don't like the way my garden doesn't look nice with the weeds. Or even better, I'm afraid that snakes will come, whatever other things can grow in the weeds, other animals. So then I am allowed to weed. However, weeding with the uprooting the weeds is a problem. It is a problem, and therefore it is recommended to only cut them if it is the roots that are tangled with roots of other bushes or flowers or other plants that I'm interested in, and they might damage those plants, then I am allowed to then dig and try and take it out. The best thing is to therefore try and get the weeds when they're still small, or even better, before Shemitah to, what do you call it? You put this resource that makes it not grow. Unorganic. No, it's not good.
No, very bad for the environment.
Okay. There is nothing good for the environment to do it instead?
You can put down mulch.
There you go.
You can put down a layer of cardboard, something like that.
Okay. So if you want advice on how to do it, go to Emma, and Emma will come up with the right advice that will be both friendly to the environment and to Shemitah. That's important. Okay, mowing the lawn. Mowing the lawn is okay as long as we're doing it in order for the lawn to look nice. But if we're doing it in order for the grass to grow better, that is a problem. Therefore, it is better to mow the lawn more often on Shemitah than less. Why? Because when we mow the lawn more often, then we cut only we cut it, we don't have to cut it too low. We cut it a bit, we leave it longer. And when you leave it longer, it doesn't really help the grass to grow even better. If you want the grass to grow even better, you want to cut it short. But if we do it more often, then we could do it not as short, and then we're not doing it for it to grow, but just for the way it looks. So the opposite of watering. Watering we do less often, mowing we do more often. If we have new grass that we never mowed before Shemitah, that is a problem, because the first mowing of the grass is critical for its growing. The first mowing makes it really take root and spread better and set itself to grow. So we want to plant grass in advance in order for us to have time to mow it at least once before Shemitah. Fertilizer. So we are allowed to fertilize if we need to for the sake, meaning if we won't fertilize it, then the plants are going to be destroyed. But if it is just to make them grow even better and stronger than they are now, that is a problem. Therefore, a very good, and I don't know if this is good for the environment, Emma, please tell me that. There are fertilizers today that you put in the ground and it releases itself slowly. You don't have to do it too often. And then you could do it before Shemitah, and it basically helps for the year round. Is it okay for them?
I don't know about that, but I listened to another share on Shemitah, another from something in the Jerusalem Botanical Gardens, and she also mentioned the annual application of the slow release fertilizer.
Yes.
That's not organic, but it's certainly Shemitah friendly, and if you use fertilizers in your garden, that's fine.
Is there any organic solution that would
fertilizer? Compost, rather.
No, but with that you have to do the slow release. Okay, well,
I don't know.
It's something to find out.
I don't use fertilizer.
Yeah.
What
okay.
I'm hearing is the job that Emma does can be done like easily, and the jobs that I do, like I have to do more regularly.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So pruning. Okay. So pruning, you remember, is a deoraita, is a Torah thing. So it's more problematic. However, by definition, pruning is the pruning that the Torah doesn't allow, is pruning that is done for the sake, one opinion, only that what is done for the sake of the produce. Even if it is done for the sake of the tree, it is allowed, according to one opinion. But even according to the other opinion, if I want to cut a tree because it's growing into the sidewalk or something like that, that is not considered pruning. That is just cutting something out of the way. So pruning is only when my aim is the tree. If it is not the tree, then that's okay. If it is done for beauty purposes, it is also fine. It is not as easy as if to get it out of the way, meaning if it is growing into the way and I want to prune it, that is really no problem. If it is for beauty, then it is okay, but I have to make sure that it's not also good for the tree. So if, for instance, I have a new gader chaya. How do you say gader chaya in English? A growing fence? Living fence? Yeah, I have a new living fence that didn't thicken yet, and now so every cutting of it makes it grow thicker. So even though I'm doing it, I want it to be straight, and that's why I'm doing it. But by the same time, it is also making grow thicker. It is problematic. So it is better to do whatever I could do before Shemitah and not on Shemitah. However, if my living fence is very thickened, it's a wonderful fence, it's growing there already for years, and all I want to do, I want it to look nice and straight, then that is okay. Strictly speaking, that's okay. If someone wants to be more strict, then okay, don't do it before Shemitah, do it after Shemitah, but strictly speaking, you do it also on Shemitah if it is for beauty purposes. Okay, some of us live in apartment buildings, so we don't necessarily control what happens in the garden. We'd be a minority. I don't know. This is a very from area, so maybe we're not a minority, but maybe we are in some buildings. So what do we do? So we could try and convince the others, but if they're not convinced, then there is a simple solution. We tell them, listen here, Vad Bait is, I don't know, 500 shekels every month. Your 500 shekels of Shemitah goes to the garden. My 500 shekel goes to washing the floors this year. I hope that's okay with you. And if it should be okay with them, right? They won't mind. And that's what you do. And then you tell them, and just to be sure, I relinquish ownership. I mafkir my part in the Gina Meshutefet, in the communal garden of our building. And that, according to most poskim, works, and ready. There is no better solution than that. So that's what one can do. Okay. What can we do before Shemitah in the garden? So there are certain things. Okay, so I discussed certain things like making sure that weeds not grow. We could weed as much as we can before. We could prune whatever we can before. But then planting. I said also setting if we have a computerized system, we could set it before. All of those things are wonderful. Planting. What can we plant right before Shemitah? What from when it is too late to plant? So anything that will sprout before Rosh Hashanah, we're allowed to put. So let's say we want to put pumpkins. We want to, whatever it is. If it is going to sprout is the word, right? To go out of if it's going to sprout before Rosh Hashanah out of the ground, that's fine. If we are planting something with a bit of ground, that it could grow in the ground as it is, we could plant it up until Rosh Hashanah itself. I'm not talking yet about trees. I'm talking about small flowers and things. Until Rosh Hashanah, we're allowed to put it in the ground. Trees. Fruit trees, we want them to take root a month before Rosh Hashanah. And it takes the time it takes a tree to set root in the ground is about 2 weeks. So if we're taking a tree without what do you call it around it?
The earth around the roots.
Yes, without the earth around the roots. What's the word? Yeah. Okay, so if you take it and you want to plant it, or if it either doesn't have earth at all, or if it has very little, that if you would, the question is like this tree, if you wouldn't plant it now with the earth that it has, could it grow with this earth? Yes or no? If it cannot, then you have to plant it 6 weeks before Rosh Hashanah. 2 weeks in order to set root, and then a month with set roots in the ground until Shana. Why? because you want to start counting Ola. So when you plant a tree, the first 3 years of the tree, you're not allowed to eat its produce, right? Even if it has produce, you're not allowed to eat it because it's Ola. So the first year is the year you planted it in. So if I plant a tree now, this will be the first year, regardless of when I planted it. So meaning when Rosh Hashanah will come, a year passed, even though it's only a month. But if it is less than a month before Rosh Hashanah, then it's not counted as a year. So as long as it went through a month before Rosh Hashanah, this year is counted as its first year. So this year is the 6th year, right? Because next year is the 7th. So the 6th year would be the first, the 7th, the second, and the next, and the first, the third. And that's wonderful. That's great. But what would happen if it took root at a time when it didn't have a month before Rosh Hashanah? Then what will be the first year for this tree? The 7th year, Shemitah. So then in the second year, I would come and I will tell everyone, my tree now is its 3rd year. Now it's not Ola anymore. Wonderful. Then people will calculate back and say, just a minute. Now's the 3rd year mean? You planted it on Shemitah. And I'll say, no, it wasn't on Shemitah. It was before Shemitah. It was only this and that. So we don't want that type of thing to happen. We don't want a tree to be a tree that its first year is counted as Shemitah as if it was planted on Shemitah. So therefore we say you want to count at least a month of it once it's set root before Shemitah. So it takes 2 weeks to set root, then a month with the roots set in order for this year to be counted. So 6 weeks before Rosh Hashanah. So that is the 15th of Av. That is the last period of planting trees without ground around them. Okay. If they do have ground, so I could do it up until Rosh Chodesh Elul, because then they have enough ground as it is. So all it has to do, it has to have a month in the ground because it doesn't have to set root. Its roots are already set. So it has to be in the ground for a month and that's it. So until Rosh Chodesh Elul. So if most trees we buy today in those black things, they have enough ground that they could grow very nicely. So basically in those cases, Rosh Chodesh Elul, that is the last time to plant trees. Trees that are not fruit trees, I don't have to have that month because there is no Ola. So all I need is for the tree to set root before Shemitah came. So if it is without earth, up to the middle of Elul, 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah. If it is with earth, until Rosh Hashanah itself. Okay. That is the garden. What about pots with plants that we have inside the home? So the Torah discusses 2 things. The Torah discusses fields and the Torah discusses the earth. Sadcha lo tizra, right? Your field, you mustn't sow, etc. So I mustn't do work in the field. And the Torah also says that v'ha'aretz Shabbat Shabbaton yeh la'aretz. It should be a sabbatical for the land. Okay. What if I manage to grow something which is not in the field and not in the land? So sometimes something could be in the field, but not necessarily in the land. For instance, if I have a field of pots, so I have a field, but I don't grow them in the land itself. I have pots and I grow them in the pots. So that's a field, but it's not in the land. Or I could have something growing in the land, not in the field. For instance, in a tree in my garden. It's not a field, it's in my garden. It's one tree, but it's in the land. But if it is in a pot inside my home, then it's not a land, it's not a field. So maybe that's fine. It seems, according to most poskim, that is okay because it's not a field, it's not a land, and therefore it is okay. But there are certain conditions. If a pot has a hole, then it's not clear that it's considered separate from the land. So it has to have. So there are discussions whether if you have because we have tiles, maybe it is considered, but okay. But just in case, you could have a plate underneath. Once you have a plate, then it's not connected to the ground. It's fine. If the pot itself doesn't have a hole, it's definitely not connected to the ground. So basically, pots in the house, since most pots, I don't know anyone who has a pot with a hole without a plate underneath, right? So it's not considered in the field, it's not considered in the land, and therefore you are allowed to do anything regularly to it during the year. You're allowed to move it from place to place. You're allowed to do everything. What you want to be careful is not to take it from inside the home to outside, because then you're planting. Okay, so a mirpeset, it depends if the mirpeset has a roof, because then it might be still considered inside. But if there is no roof, that's already the field, that's already problematic. But as long as it has a roof, that's okay. If you have pots of plants on the window on the outside, then that is considered outside. If there is not a roof of it, so that's considered outside, and you have to treat it like your garden on Shemitah. But inside the house is inside the house, and that's not, Shemitah doesn't apply to pots inside the house. Okay.
The box that's on the 12th floor.
Yes, so there are discussions whether or not that will count, but there seems to be. Sorry?
Those window boxes usually have trays connected.
Right. No, but the problem there is because the Talmud Yerushalmi discusses what would be not considered the field is if it has a roof above it. So it could be that even if although it's high, because there is no roof above it, maybe it is. But there are plenty of those that say no, if it's high enough, then it's fine.
Anyway, Richard's talking about my mum's got on this raised anyway because of her wheelchair. So she's got on the 12th floor, on raised benches, the balcony, and then the tachtit, and then the pot.
Yes. So there are plenty of opinions that will be fine. Yes. Okay. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. So I'll just sum up what we said. We saw taking care of the garden is not allowed. One has to relinquish ownership over the produce, whether actively or not actively. We said just in case, let's do it actively, but that doesn't mean that anyone can come in whenever they want. But we should give access to people to our produce if we have it in the garden. Anything that is done of the rabbinic things that are not allowed, watering, etc., that is done for the plants not to wither and dry is okay. Anything that is done to make them stronger than what they are right now, stronger or better or bigger than what they are right now, is not allowed. So therefore, watering, we will wait for it, not until it is getting dry, but to the point that our gardener tells us, if you don't water it now, it will get dry. That is when we water it. Once we water it, we can water it as much as we want. All the other things we do, if it is for aesthetic reasons, it's okay. But if it's for making the plants grow better, it's not okay.
What about dedicating flowers?
I'm sorry?
Dedicating flowers.
What is?
Like if you have a plant, and the flowers die, you take off the heads.
So it depends why you do it. If you do it because, right. So if you do it in order to you want it to look nice right now, that's okay. But if you're doing it in order to give room for the other flowers to grow, that is more problematic. So it could be that the difference to do it, usually you might like cut the dead flowers. Here, maybe you just like take the top off or something like that. That meaning you'll make it look nice now, but not necessarily in a way that it will make the other flowers grow.
I'm cutting these dead heads off because it looks horrible.
Yes, but that
consequences, more flowers grow. That's not why you do it.
That's a good question, because we're verging here on the question of, The thing is, because it's pruning.
It's not pruning.
You have to turn your camera on back on.
It's not a fruit.
Thank you.
It's not a vine, it's not a fruit.
You're right. But okay. But it is not a fruit, so it is less. You're right. According to the opinions that were concerned only with fruit, you're right. But it is the plant itself. You want it to be to grow more. So I would say it's a good question. It's a
flowers in general. We can discuss that separately. Not fruit.
You're right. Okay, so I'll just mention this.
Before you answer, no, everything okay. People on Zoom cannot hear the questions.
Okay. So the question was, what about flowers? They're not fruit, etc. So in general, although the Torah talks about produce and fruits, etc., and grain, we apply the halachot of Shemitah also to any plant. So anything that will make the plant grow more, whether it's flowers, bushes, anything like that, is not allowed. Anything that is done to sustain it the way it is allowed. Anything that is done for matters for aesthetic, purely aesthetic, is allowed. But when we say aesthetic, we have to explain what we mean. We mean that it will look nice now, not to make it grow more. So if it does both, so with cutting, I'm not sure. I have to check that.
And another question: if you don't prune, say, your parsley, it's going to go to seed, which means it's going to make seeds, which are going to fall into the ground, and then they're going to grow. You didn't do it. You did it by not cutting.
Right. But then you didn't do it. It happened by itself, so that will be fine. Yeah.
I just ask from a practical point of view, what is your responsibility vis-a-vis supervision? So if you have a gardener, and I presume you'd have to say, I want to keep the Shemitah and explain what it is. But from a practical point of view, you can't be. Are you supposed to watch what he does?
No. But you tell him what is it exactly you want him to do.
And secondly, if he has, or if your gardener is, or if he has Arab workers, do the laws of Shemitah, or if an Arab guy just goes and cuts whatever he wants, does whatever he wants, of his own volition.
Yes. So there. So there also, you should tell him you don't want to. If he went ahead and did it, he went ahead and did it. It's not your responsibility, but you should make it clear that you're not interested in it.
Because if you're not there, he just
Yeah, if you're not,
Yeah,
no, you don't have to be there.
You just have to tell your gardener.
You tell
keep the Shemitah, and if he asks you how, you say this, and
this. Yeah. No, even if he doesn't ask you how, so you ask me for a piece of paper that I'll do. Yes. So I'll prepare something, please, God. I didn't have the chance to do it for today, but I'll do it. I think that's a very good thing. Other than that, you don't have to stand on his head the whole time. You tell him what it is that you want, and that's that. Okay, so we also saw how to take care, what we should do before Shemitah, planting, etc., and pots at home with a plate or that don't have a hole are not considered part of the garden, and we're allowed to treat them as we do every year. So that would be that for today, and it's a lot to take in. I'm not sure I myself was ever able to take it all in, but we'll have Sikum at the very end, at the end of the shiur. Once I finish these 6 talks, so we have 4 more, I asked Rav Rimon to come and give a talk on Shemitah. He agreed, but we have to agree on a date. So more to come.